Arizona Cardinals. And look, we've said this a ton, Sam, but the defensive line, man, I mean, this was like you had a clear need. They attacked it in all facets, and it's going to be much better. And, the biggest thing for Arizona, I thought this offseason was the defense generally, but absolutely up front. And I think they attacked their defensive front with a good mix of veterans and late career veterans like Calais Campbell, who's just returning to Arizona. Guys like Dalvin, Tomlinson, but then Walter Nolan, and just having way more depth up front. Jordan Birch, actually using draft picks, bringing in veterans. This defensive front looks way better than it did last year, and I think that's the biggest win this offseason for the Cardinals.
Yeah, I don't know whether this is a good way of viewing stuff or not. It may well be a complete mental fallacy, but Trevor thinks this way as well from listening to some of his draft coverage. Like, I like when you can see the pattern, like the thought process, the overall strategy and what a team is doing coherently throughout a draft, like an offseason, whatever it is. I like sort of seeing, well, this is clearly the plan that this team has, and everything's moving in the direction of that specific goal. That makes sense to me. I don't like it as much where it all looks kind of incoherent and scattershot, and each individual move may make sense, but it all sort of feels a bit like random. I don't like that as much, even though I don't know that it makes a difference. It might, like, as long as you're upgrading in each different thing, does it really matter if the pattern
I don't think it matters.
Fits in your head or not? But for the Cardinals, so consequently, the Cardinals are one of my favorite off seasons because it all looks like a plan. It all looks like somebody set out and gone, look, we've got some things to work with on offense, but this defense is a disaster. It looks like, a second string unit in a preseason game. Let's go. We need to upgrade this across the board. And they have. Like, they brought in starters every step of the way. We've got Josh Sweat. We've got Dalvin Tomlinson, Calais Campbell coming in as the seasoned grizzled old veteran, all in free agency. We're keeping a guy like Baron Browning, who we brought in previously, who was dealing with an injury, and maybe he'll be a better player going forward. And then the draft, we're going to keep going. Walter Nolan, like top 10 potential, top 10 talent in this draft in terms of impact defensive lineman. And then throughout the rest of that draft, we're going to keep going with the various other levels of the defense as well. Will Johnson in the secondary, Jordan Birch on the defensive line as well, but Cody Simon at linebacker. Like, I like this offseason because it felt like this defense is so far behind the other side of the ball. Let's deploy everything we have to accelerate that side.
Hey guys, just taking a quick break to tell you, hey, just over 50% of you are still unsubscribed to Check the Mic. It helps the channel. It helps to make sure that you don't miss any of our shows. So if you have a chance, hit the subscribe button right now. This one reminds me, and the reason why it feels good to you is because of what we said, is how bad the starting point was and that they needed to attack it. This reminds me a little bit of the 2022 to 23 offseason for the Cleveland Browns. Back in 22, Myles Garrett was the only guy that could get pressure for the Browns. He was the only guy, and he's great, but they had some serious issues. And then they brought in Zadarius Smith. They brought in Osa Odighizuwa. They brought in Dalvin Tomlinson, ironically. And the next year had one of the best pass rushes in the NFL. And it's like, all right, they solved this thing, right? And it was a boomer bust type of defense. They gave up some big plays, but I think EPA-wise, they were second or third in the NFL that year before they had their collapse in the playoffs against the Texans. So yeah, they had busted coverages. They had some bad big plays allowed, but that Browns defensive front in one off season could all of a sudden, rush the passer with 4 and create havoc. And they did a great job. I'm not going to put Arizona into that same bucket because Garrett is the foundation piece that's obviously missing. But you're talking about a team that really could not rush the passer with 4. When they did start to cause problems, they had some late game success against the 49ers and Brock Purdy when they were still cooking early in the year. It felt like it was schemed up. It felt like they were sending pressures at the right time. It just felt like they were dodging personnel issues on defense all last season. And how many times did we show up on a Monday morning and say, man, the Cardinals played hard. They looked overmatched, but they played hard. I can't wait to see what happens when Jonathan Gannon gets a little bit more talent on the defensive side of the ball. This gives them, when we do our previews in August, in July and August and we start previewing the season, I think we're both going to feel pretty good about the Cardinals going into this year, in part because all of these defensive additions and how hard they played last year with basically, I thought, a second string front seven. It looks much better this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Jonathan Gannon, in fact, I think they've been a very well-coached team on both sides of the ball since Jonathan Gannon arrived as head coach. I think that they were making really impressive things happen schematically, despite the relative lack of talent, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. I think they have significantly upgraded that. Now, maybe we could be a little bit cautious with the praise because, as you said, it's not like they found a Myles Garrett out there, right? Like Josh Sweat is good, not great. Dalvin Tomlinson is limited and sort of old, but at least he belongs starting in an NFL defensive line. Walter Nolan is the big swing because he's the guy that does have legitimate like impact, top 10 type of potential, albeit, not quite as consistent or as sort of proven as a guy like Jalen Carter on the field, who he reminds me a little bit of from a couple of years ago. But they brought in upgrades. Now, those upgrades need to actually materialize into something, but at least they've added all these pieces to that defense, and we can really try and see what Jonathan Gannon can do when he has upgraded personnel.
We haven't not a lot of additions on the offensive side of the ball, but they were pretty much locked in there, and I think that's why it feels good to you. It's like, all right, we need secondary help, we need cornerback help, we need defensive line help, and they added potential pieces there. So I thought it was a nice offseason for Arizona, given their needs.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.